there, and welcome to the AMASV Podcast, Episode 3. So this is our third part of the series, So You Want to Work in Marketing. And for this episode, we're going to be talking about the first 90 days on the job. So primarily, we're going to dive right into the topic, but I just wanted to introduce everyone before we do that. Again, my name is Matt Lucas. I'm the VP of Collegiate at AMASV. And I work with the colleges and other institutions in order to get volunteers and new members to join our organization, but primarily those who are coming directly out of college. I'm gathered here with Logan, Hanedi, and Gina. Gina, want to introduce yourself a little bit as you weren't on last week's episode?
Sure. I am Gina, and I am the VP of Programming here at AMASV, and I just head up the events and any currently virtual events that we have going on, and I work with Matt and Logan and Hanedi closely on those items.
Fantastic. And just like last week, we have Hanedi. Just say a little bit about yourself, just because in case someone didn't watch last week's episode.
I'm Hanedi. I work at Runyon Saltzman. I'm an account coordinator. And on my downtime, I volunteer with the American Marketing Association as the social media director. And I work closely with other great team members to put that social media content out there, including Logan and also Salvador and Camille. I also help with programming, as Gina said, kind of getting the word out there about events. And with Matt on the podcast. So I'm excited to be on the third episode.
Fantastic. And Mr. Logan, just a quick little blurb about yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hi there, my name is Logan Mayville. Been in digital marketing for about 10 years, currently working at an agency in Sacramento called Postmodern Marketing as our director of business development. And excited for the kids who are graduating right now and looking for jobs, and I just want to try to lend a hand.
Fantastic. And so, yeah, as we kind of mentioned, this episode is really primarily going to be talking about the first 90 days. So as we talked about in the previous episodes, the first one was talking about the lead up, what you should do before you start applying. The second one was as you're applying. And now we're talking about that final step you want to be taking. So this is, you're already hired at this stage. You're going into the hiring process. What can we do as employees in those first 90 days, 3 months, thinking about it? What can we do to really show who we are and that extra amount of flair that got you hired? Now you had to deliver. That's that last piece. So I want to kind of start with Gina on this one. So Gina, what has been your experience in your career path? What have you seen? What have been some things you've done or have seen that really make you stand out as that new employee on the block?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I think the most important thing that we can do in really any profession stepping on to a new job is to read the room and kind of understand what the environment is that we're walking into, what the relationship dynamics are, who's the leader, who is the person that might be behind the scenes and driving decisions. Those are some really important things to know right up front. And really just getting to know these people, getting to know your new coworkers, your new leadership, getting to know others that might even be people who work at maybe a lower level than you do, getting to know everyone and learning who they are, what makes them operate well, and how you can help to improve their own performance with what you're doing in your area as well. So I think that those are some really important things to point out in the first 90 days of your employment.
I absolutely agree. Kind of bouncing off that. I found that it's like every company, you have a different culture. Some cultures will be more corporate in one way or another. Not necessarily that's a way of being, but you know, it's more very like, this is the way we do it. And I found in companies such as startups or like smaller companies, it's more tight knit and you're more, I don't know, it seems more cohesive in a way, more friendly, more I don't want to bash the corporate side of it, but you know what I mean? Like it seems more, I don't know,
More casual.
casual.
Yeah,
Thank you.
casual.
God, that's
Maybe
another way to,
open.
yeah. I found that it's, you can, be more flexible with what you're creating, as in my role,
Mhm.
especially because to the smaller companies I've worked for, I've been able to be, more creative, more have more ownership over what I'm creating to some degree. Whereas if you're like at a big company like Disney, they're gonna absolutely own everything you touch. But and that's not necessarily a bad thing. They have great quality products. They create amazing things, but you got to kind of understand that with that huge company comes comes this, this control that they're going to have over it. But yeah, I definitely
Right.
agree. Understanding that culture is one of the first things you can do to guide success there.
And then, of course, there are some companies that you'll enter into that might be more corporate, but the team that you started on is not, is kind of a new team, and you're learning now together how to navigate, the environment, and you're learning, those sometimes red tape, sometimes entry points, depending on the organization as well. So it could be that type of a dynamic too.
Absolutely. Logan, kind of touching on that same point, do you have any examples you've come in contact with when it comes to like learning the company's culture, or any other points that are adjacent to that you'd like to bring up here?
Yeah, I would just say, I agree with you 100%. It's just, be a sponge. It's definitely time to listen. That first week, that first 3 months, even, it's not a time to make your imprint, so to speak. I prefer to kind of go along and before you can get along type of deal. So yeah, just be a sponge, read the room, like Gina said. But I would also add, let's just say that, the first 3 months, I want to point out that it's not important to have everything figured out in 3 months. Okay, there's going to be a learning curve that goes on for up to a year, or however long it depends. But that first 3 months is crucial because it kind of sets a tone for who you are and what you're about, and sort of how people are going to interact with you, and where they're going to see you on this kind of hierarchy of productivity, or just the general org chart. So the first thing I would suggest is, even shorter than 3 months, that first week is show up early and stay late. And I mean, just plan for it. So long as you're able, getting a code to the building or wherever you're permitted to do, is just plan to show up early and plan to stay late. So adjust your hours for 15 minutes before work and 15 minutes after work. Now, don't be weird about it, obviously, but the point is, it's going to be very exciting when you get that first job. You're going to have more money than you've had for a while. You're going to want to go celebrate with your friends. There's going to be a lot of temptations to sort of do that for at least the first week or two. Come early, stay late. It's a very good sign for a brand new hire.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. Yeah, making sure you're staying like, some companies, they actually have a hard stop. But if you have a company that is like, you're clocking out at 5, and there's certain companies that do that. One thing you can do to impress them is, and don't be like super like, oh, I spent all this time over the weekend, learning stuff for work, but kind of mention along the way, breadcrumb it, as I like to say, um, that you've been outside of work, you're kind of learning. For example, if you're in a creative role like myself, mention that you've been learning, Photoshop and all this other stuff, unless of course the role already requires it, but learning extra on top of what you're already doing, just because it's going to make you even better at your job if you're taking time to learn these tools. And I'm not saying, go crazy at it, but 20 minutes a day over X amount of days, you're just going to get better at doing anything. Whether it's, exercising or working on, video editing or whatever it is. So just taking some extra time out of that day to kind of hone your skills on what you're already going to be using in your role, and do it, whether it's, just being more organized or learning the, Photoshop, Adobe suite, whatever it may be. Stuff like that will make you even more valuable to the company, more so along the path you're going to be making at that company. So just go ahead and do it. I highly recommend it. Um, Hanedi, what has your experience been with your first 90 days? Because are you still in your first 90 at Runyon?
Yeah, my 90-day review is tomorrow.
Nice.
How about that?
Yeah. So
So,
like exactly.
so what would you say would be some things that you would say you've learned in your first 90 days?
So definitely company culture, just like Gina said. My first 90 days was nothing like I expected it would be. I started and then I was given like very little work to begin with, but I thought it was the perfect like sort of not strategy to kind of get me to where I needed to be, but it was sort of the perfect situation to get me where I needed to be, because I sort of started out with like easier work and then it got tougher. And then as I started working with new team members, I was introduced to other assignments and work I've never done before. So as Matt said, to challenge yourself. Sometimes I have work that I can coordinate with another coworker, and sometimes I decide I'm going to take this on, even though I could just like let her do it. It's because it's the learning experience that matters. So yeah, be a sponge, just like Logan said. And don't doubt yourself either, because things are going to be hard, like any new thing is. It takes time to learn. And I was actually communicating with a new hire and telling her like how much I was struggling in the beginning. And it's not because the work was hard, it's because I wasn't used to it. So practice makes perfect, and practice takes time too. And there's always an opportunity to learn something new. So yeah, the first 90 days is a learning experience. Counter to what Logan said, I thought I had to be perfect in the 90 days. I really wanted to impress everyone that I was working with. And I really didn't want to make any mistakes or send out emails to the wrong contacts or forget out details. But yeah, so that's something that I learned today, is that you don't have to be perfect during your 90 days. But that's what my experience has been like so far, and I've improved a lot since my first day, and I've learned a lot since my first day. So it makes me excited for what's coming up in the future, and people are really starting to rely on me now, which is exciting. It means I have something to offer. So the 90 days is definitely a growing experience with the company.
One thing I want to touch on there, and it kind of resonating with what I've already said last week with my 3 Ps, patience, persistence, and progress. You're going to be in your first 90 days. Well, so in your first 90 days, it's going to feel like a blitz of information. Just like the first day, it's going to obviously be expanded over time, but you're going to be learning new things, and just creating this whole work, like this whole mindset of being able to learn things. And you have to have the 3 Ps with you, because if you're not, you're going to become very frustrated, and you still maybe be frustrated with the 3 Ps, but you have to kind of learn to use them. How you're going to have to learn and create this mindset of patience, because whether you're learning Photoshop for the first time, and yes, I'm going to keep going back to the creative tools because what I know, but if whether you've never worked in a team before and you've mainly been by yourself, or you've never managed an account before, or you've never created anything on these creative platforms, you're going to have patience, because you will not understand how many times it takes to get good at something, whether it's exercise like weightlifters. You think these Olympic weightlifters started at the weight they're at? No, they started slow. They had to build up their muscles, and then they got to there. So it's all one big exercise, and you're going to have to push through, and don't doubt yourself, and just keep going, and you're going to get there. But you have to get there little by little, and you may fail. Failing is a lot of the process. You're going to have to fail if you're going to learn. Some people learn without, but it's the best way to learn. and, learn from your failures, obviously. Don't keep falling into that same rut. But I think it's one of the most important things on that first 90 days, just persistence and patience.
Touching on failure, we sent out a social media post today for National Tell a Story Day. And I added a little quote in there, and it says, "Our failures are the steps we climb." And that's a quote from Marvel's Cloak and Dagger. And I thought it was sort of the perfect quote for today because we're all professionals and we're also human. So we all make mistakes every once in a while, no matter how far advanced you are in your career or if you're just starting. Failures are always the steps that we climb, and everything is learning process, and learning makes us better.
Absolutely. So, Gina, kind of, what would be some other points you think someone should know in those first 90 days, outside of the culture aspect? Like, what would you say would be some other tips there?
I would say another piece of importance would be learning what's important to your manager, to your direct report, because that's going to help you to stay on track with any type of performance metrics that you have, that your manager has for you, or any type of long-term goals that the organization has that your manager has slotted you in for, and that might be the reason why they hired you for this particular role. It also will help you to understand how to balance your own personal professional development with some items that the manager has, and even align them. It can help you to align those with what your manager has for you as well. And so that can change depending on the type of role that you're in. So if you might be in a role where your manager isn't necessarily setting some objectives for you and is really relying on you to set those objectives for yourself based on an overall plan. Or you could be in a role where the structure of that company, again, coming back to the culture, is that, you are being, kind of handed, here are the goals that we have, here are the steps that we want to accomplish to meet these goals, and this is how we would like for you to help us with that. So it really depends on that organization, but really overall, just knowing what your manager's goals and objectives are as well. And the other piece of that, though, is that your manager is likely looking to gain some professional development as well. So the more you can help your manager to gain whatever professional development they need, it could help you to gain your own professional development, because you will be likely working on other projects that otherwise you would not be working on.
That's a great point. Like learning how to see what your manager wants is at the end of the day one of the most helpful things you can really bring to the table, because at the end of the day they're the individual who's managing you, and that relationship is really good to build out early in time as you're at that company, because depending on how fast you raise your in the ranks and all this other stuff, but it, and whether or not you stay with that company even into the end, it's you know that pays dividends unto itself, like referrals and things like that. But while you're at the company, definitely, absolutely, and it also helps you kind of structure your own day, week, or month. Kind of, if they have a timeline that's if they're very detail oriented, you want to make sure that everything you give them is detail oriented and has all of the T's crossed and I's dotted. If they're more flush, you may still want to be detail oriented, but they may want to see some, like, for example, my company right now we're designing a few internal branding changes, and so I've been given the owners are very like detail oriented, but they're also like they want to see creative and see my creative process and all that. So it's kind of loose, and I've gone from different companies where they've been very like, here's a structured piece of information. This is what you need to do and get it done. So this is a new environment to me where it's like, okay, I get the ball's in my court now. I have to show what I can bring to the table. So I have to create something without too much structure, but with a few bullet points and just make it that much better. So understanding what your manager wants will make you thrive in that relationship at the company, and it will actually help you in future jobs as well, because you'll just be able to go, okay, you'll be able to read the room a little bit better, so to speak.
Yeah, and I would actually even go so far as to say that, you can kind of ask those types of questions even farther back, like in the interview process, that you can actually start asking your manager these questions, because part of that, and it was likely covered in the last podcast, but part of that is that you're interviewing your manager as much as your manager is interviewing you. And that might be a piece that you want to make sure that you understand a little bit, at least, even though you won't have the full understanding until you're actually working directly with that person. You might want to understand a little bit about that person's style up front, to know whether that aligns with something that you can deliver.
Absolutely. And that kind of bounces back, reminds me of Logan's saying from last week, what could I have done 3 months from now that will make you want to hire me today, or something like that? Did I get it right?
Close enough.
Close enough. But yeah, something like, that kind of question will also help you read, like, what's this relationship going to be like with my manager, and how can I make it a positive one, and how can I make it cohesive and make it work really well. So yeah.
Great minds.
Yeah, I have another point based off of what you said, Matt, about sort of like giving your superiors what they want to see in your work. I've learned that everybody works differently, and my company provides a mentor. So my mentor gave me some advice, and he told me that, well, first of all, everyone works differently, because sometimes workflows are different, just as I just said. But the point is to just be a team player, and sometimes to work how your coworkers want you to work. And it's not necessarily your workflow, but it could be an assignment or a document or something. And I think being a team player really helps, and it makes the team more efficient.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, interesting. A mentor, is that like someone that's assigned your mentor, or is it you just kind of built that relationship already within the role?
No, they're assigned. Yeah, everybody gets a mentor when they get hired. So yeah, and it's somebody who's been at the company for a while. They can kind of give you a background on everything, like the company culture and team workflows and things. And it's interesting because everybody's on a different account. So everybody has a different sort of work perspective. So yeah, it's sort of like a diversity in the company in that way. Yeah, so it's nice to hear where my mentor is coming from, because they've been in the situations I've been in, which made my 90 days a lot easier on me, I think, because I sort of panicked in the beginning, and I was like, I hope my coworkers are not mad at me. I didn't answer their questions soon enough, or but I grew to learn that everybody in the company is really a team player, and little mistakes aren't as significant as I thought. And I recommend to the viewers out there who might not work at a company that offers a mentor, to sort of look up to someone in your company that you've met, and sort of ask for some of their time, and sort of sit down with them. My mentor and I sit down once a month. It doesn't have to be that often. Just somebody who's been there and who knows could really help your day go by a lot easier, because everybody has hard days. So yeah, that really helps.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't have an assigned mentor at my job, but I do have someone I can look up to. The head of operations is kind of my go-to person. So I definitely get that relationship, and definitely helps with that transition process into the company. It's like a not a culture shock, but it's an immersion. It helps you immerse yourself into the culture, if that makes sense. Culture shock was not the right word to use, but yeah. Outside of that, kind of shifting gears here, Logan, I know you mentioned something about wanting to like create a bank of work to do when you run out of time. Like, can you talk more about that? I know you mentioned that to me off the air.
Yeah, so let's think about this for a second. Hanedi had mentioned that when she got her job that she was surprised she wasn't overloaded with tasks to do. So the first thing I would say is be prepared for that, especially with entry-level jobs. They're not going to overwhelm you with too much stuff. They're going to give you what they can because they don't know you, they don't trust you. You know, you don't know the clients. You know, expect to have some downtime. Well, if you follow my advice and you're getting there early and staying late, it's like, what are you supposed to do with all this time, right? And so one thing I would suggest, like straight away, is it depends, you know, if you're working at an agency or a corporation or whatever, is like become like a student of your competitors and like also your own product, right? So like one real easy thing to do, if you're working at an agency, is just go to all of your clients' websites and then subscribe to their newsletter. You know, maybe do a critique of their website, go through every single page and just kind of read what it's about. And then in that same thing, there's generally going to be 2 or 3 or 4 industry publications that you can subscribe to as well. Now, however you want to set this up, but just, you know, kind of stick those in a folder somewhere. Anytime that you literally have nothing to do, just go into that folder and then you can be reading industry news. You can be reading news about your competitors. You can be understanding your industry a little bit better. So it's pretty simple to always have something to fall back on and read. And that way, you know, if someone asks you like, you know, what are you doing? You're like, oh, I was just studying so-and-so. And they're like, oh, wow, that's one of our competitors. What did you find out? Well, I found out X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden you look like the smartest guy in the room or girl. So stuff like that, again, it's productive, which is good. And it's definitely going to help you have more intelligent conversations about your industry within within the company that you're working at. So again, just always having something to read that's germane to your organization. I would start with competitors. I would start with industry publications, anything, of course, you're publishing as well. So just subscribe to that, have it ready to read when you got nothing to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. In my current position, I currently am managing the LinkedIn and Instagram, so I'm constantly looking at blogs. I have never looked at blogs as much as I've looked at blogs in this role, and just learning all about the technologies that we staff within. It's very important to know, hey, who are the people who's our audience, and kind of understanding what can we bring to them in that social media post today or tomorrow or next week, and planning out ahead of time projects. I think that's really, like, maybe you might not have it on day one, but if you come up with an idea, you're like, oh, that sounds like a cool idea. Do not sleep. Write that down, put it in a calendar, plan it out, or plan out time to plan it out, and kind of once you have it slightly polished, or, you know, bring it to your mentor or someone you think, you know, might be you can trust, that, you know, hey, what would you think about this idea for our company? And that will make you stand out. Because if you come up with something inventive or innovative to change the way your company works for the better, you're going to be the glowing light on the street. You are going to go places, because if the company likes what you want to create and it works out, sky's the limit. So this is, you know, going beyond the 90 days, obviously, maybe not. But yeah, that's just a good tip, I would say. Like, if you have an idea, get it down, polish it out, and then take it to that trusted person. I think that's a very important piece.
Right. And have a perspective as well. Have a perspective based on all of the information, the blogs, the, you know, information that you're getting from the different sources, social media, like you just mentioned, like scouring social media for what customers or other people that are in your market are saying about services like yours or products like yours, can help you to develop a perspective as well, that when conversations are happening, like Logan mentioned, that you will be able to come to the table with a perspective and some knowledge about what the industry is doing, how people are responding, and how the company might be able to even improve on what they're doing now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's just one of the most important things. So, all right. And then, Hanedi, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about outside of what you've already said?
Well, I was going to bounce off of what Logan and Gina said, and it's that doing things that you don't have to do, like, makes you a stronger employee. Like, well, I was just gonna like point out, like, information wise, like, one of the superiors encouraged me to read like I guess, the thing that won us our account with the governor's office, so that I have some like context and background there. And then like sometimes like my coworkers or my boss, they like recommend I take on like certain tasks, but like I feel like the big point is to like do it, like even if you don't have to. Because I feel like it's going to make you a stronger person. And also, they've asked me to do it anyway, actually, a few times. And I'm just like, I should have just done it on my own when they recommended it.
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes when I'm in my role, I'm like, I'll think of something, I'm on a task, but I'll think of something and I'm like, oh, I really should look at this or kind of hone my skill in this area. And then I'll be like, oh, but I have this other task to do and I'll get it done. And then, 2 days later, my coworker, my head of operations or my co-owner's like, oh, I thought of something you could be doing. And I was like, I had 2 days lead time to read their
yeah.
mind and be like, oh, I already did that. But I didn't because and of course, time gets away sometimes, some days, and you won't
I
always
know. Yeah, like 8 hours
find
isn't enough.
that golden hour where you can
Yeah.
really hit the mark, but it happens. But yeah, I wanted to actually also touch on because Gina, you mentioned something to me earlier on about your 30, 60, 90-day plan. You want to kind of tell me again what that's regarding?
Yeah, so one recommendation that I would have for, especially for new employees, entry-level employees, is to have some type of 30, 60, 90-day plan. My current organization actually does them already. It's kind of part of our process, but not all organizations do that. So it's great to have a 30, 60, 90-day plan that includes goals, performance goals, even personal goals that you want to achieve in that time frame, and what impact you want to make. And really the purpose of this 30, 60, 90-day plan is to be able to make the biggest impact in that first 90 days as you can. Now, as we mentioned, we don't want to like blow everyone out of the water in your first 90 days. So don't put the pressure on yourself to do that. If you can, then do it. But for the most part, you're likely going to be learning the environment, learning the job, trying to work through a lot. So don't put so much pressure on yourself to blow everyone out of the water with how great your skills are and how much you know about the industry. You're just learning. But you can find some low-hanging fruit, and you can find, okay, well, this is something that I have skill at, or I know how to do, or something that I learned in a class that I know that I can make an impact in, and find that low-hanging fruit. And you can actually track it as you're doing it. So for example, if you are starting social media and you are on the social media team, and your job is to, for example, what Matt was saying, do creative for social media. You can take that initiative to actually monitor the creative results in the back end of the channel, depending on whether they offer those types of metrics on that particular social media channel. And you can actually track those results and keep those for yourself and you can present them to your manager as well. But at the end of those 90 days, you can say, okay, this is what I achieved within 90 days. And honestly, it's amazing what you can achieve within 90 days when you do find that low hanging fruit that you can really move needles on, but might not necessarily be the greatest, hugest impact. It's just going to be an impact, and it will show your manager that you know how to make an impact as well.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more with that statement. And yeah, of course, like she mentioned, if you can find something to blow someone out of the water, or just make that impact, do it. Yeah, outside of that, Logan, I know, kind of shifting gears again. So what would you say, is there something else that you have that you would recommend to individuals in these last few minutes here we have, for those first 90 days? What's one
Yeah.
more thing?
So, and on more of a lighthearted note, because we are still like humans. You're going to be working with other humans, and there's going to be social interactions that go along with them. And you're not expected to be some sort of machine who just sits at your computer pumping out work all day. So my suggestion would be this: is that like bring something into the office or your cubicle or your space that you have, your desk, that is like kind of like you, and shows a little bit of personality. Hang something up on your wall, or do whatever. So I'll give you an example. One thing I did is I'm a big fan of trivia and Jeopardy, so I had one of those Jeopardy desk calendars. I just keep it on my desk, and you once a day you tear off the thing, you try to think of the answer, blah blah blah. Well, someone walked by and was like, "Oh, hey, what do you got there?" And she looked, knew what it was, struck up a conversation with me. Someone who was outside my department, I didn't really know that well. And then what happened was that it kind of became a habit, is that she would just kind of stop by, once a day or a couple times a week or whatever, and just kind of go, "Did you do today's yet?" And I said no, because I knew she was coming over to see it, so I'd wait. And then we would, talk about it, joke for, 90 seconds or whatever, and then kind of just move on. But point being, it gave me a real nice way to start forming a relationship with someone who, that didn't have to be necessarily about work. And it was quick, it was easy, and it was just kind of over when it was done. And again, let someone kind of get to know you in a professional capacity that's a little more lighthearted, gives you personality, shows off something about you that lets people get to know you a little bit. So just bring something that's you, maybe it's a sports pennant. Mine was Jeopardy calendar. You don't have to go flaunting it, of course, but it's nice to just have something that someone can look at, and a conversation starter for people maybe don't always see.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's huge. And so, kind of a tangent of this. So depending on what your culture is, learn the work culture first, which is very important for this. But once you've learned the work culture, given the fact that we're all remote, or most of us are remote, I would say one other thing you can bring to that, experience is, if you're just doing Zoom meetings, mock up a nice Zoom background. There's this one guy that works in our sales team, and he's the lead sales guy, so he already has this persona he has to keep up. But he has this, he always says beach living, because that's where he wants to be once he closes all of his sales, gets the top biller for the month, for the year even. He wants to be on a beach. So what does he have as a Zoom background? It's a gif of a palm tree blowing in the wind, and he's on the beach. Now, of course, if this is more of a very, suit and tie type of environment, and everything's super professional, and maybe don't do that. But I just thought it was interesting, like his motto is beach living all the
Nice.
time, and he's literally every Zoom meeting is on the beach. So
Creative.
just something that you can use to differentiate yourself as well in those first 90 days. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's important to get to know like people in your company, just like the little things that make you stand out is like really important, because I was telling my mentor, like, I only know a few people in the company, and one I met through the American Marketing Association. And so what I did was, when my supervisor offered me the opportunity to join one of our committees in the company, I decided to join one. I was like, like, I'll make an impression on my boss by showing that I'm motivated to like make the company better. And also I'll get to meet new people. And the committee I decided to join was the social parentheses fun committee. And I just think that sounds amazing. So we have our first meeting next week, and I'll be able to introduce myself then. And I'll be like, "Hi, I work at your company. Like, nice to meet you." So, and then when we go back into the office, and they'll be able to say, "Oh, hey, you're on the fun committee."
Yeah. I think yeah, if your company gives you those opportunities like that, you know, stuff outside of work, or even um joining committees or having mentors, all these things. They're just added features that you can use to your own personal growth at the company. And I think it's very important to add that piece. Just engross yourself in everything, and give it a taste. If you don't necessarily like it or it's not for you, for whether it be a committee or whatever it might be, just don't do that part. But I think it's very important to fully immerse yourself in everything that is your company within the first 90 days. Obviously, kind of going back to my exercise metaphor earlier, you don't want to overdo it and 100% burden yourself out in the first 90 days, but do show yourself off. Make sure to, be known and everything, but definitely don't want to have a blown quad or, whatever workout metaphor I can bring up, but do all you can and put your best foot forward as you start your new career. I think it's one of the most important things there. Outside of that, does anyone else have any other points they would like to make?
Just, good luck to all the recent grads who are out there looking.
Absolutely. Yeah. And given, we're all in the pandemic, looks like it's starting to take a turn for the better. I would say that, yeah, absolutely good luck. Get out there. Now with these 3 podcasts, you should have all the information you need. Don't look anywhere else. This is the one source of information you need. It's a joke. But yeah, outside of that, I just want to thank all of you for joining me today. Before we go, I would be remiss if I did not let everyone tell a little bit about themselves and how everyone can connect with you. I'll start. If you can find me on LinkedIn/MM Lucas. I am the VP of Collegiate for AMASV. Let's just go around. Gina, how can people learn more about what you do in marketing and connect with you on LinkedIn and so forth?
Yes, again, I am the VP of Programming for AMASV, and you can find me on LinkedIn, and it would be /Gina Weatherspoon, and that's WEATHERSPOON.
Fantastic. And Hanedi and Logan.
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, where you can see my extensive experience that led me up to my dream role. It took me a while, by the way, and you'll see that. It is LinkedIn /my name, which is HANEDIKARAJEH. Or if you don't want to go through all that trouble, you can look up Runyon Saltzman and look under the People tab, and I will be there and you can find me. Please send me a message and we can have a short informational interview. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, that's how I got my start, having a bunch of informational interviews and meeting people. So I'd like to do that for someone else and help them reach their career goals.
Fantastic. And Logan?
Yeah, very good. Like I said, if you want to get in touch, if you're serious about getting a job in Sacramento, I'd be happy to help. My name is Logan Mayville. You can Google me, as the kids say, and you should be able to get in touch with me that way. So good luck out there. And yeah, hope this was helpful.
Fantastic. And I do want to thank AMASV for allowing us to do this podcast. Please be sure to follow us at AMA Sac Valley on Instagram and follow American Marketing Association Sacramento Valley on LinkedIn. We have more events going all the time, virtual for now, but once we start going back to in person, we'll have tons of events there. And be sure to keep an eye out. We may have more podcasts coming your way. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening, morning, whenever the heck you're listening to us. Have a good one and stay safe out there. Bye-bye.